I woke up to an empty driveway, but I wasn't surprised. Not even a little. In fact, I had been waiting for this moment ever since Karen, the self-proclaimed HOA queen, started waging war against my RV. I leaned against my front door, sipping my morning coffee as the realization settled in. Karen had actually done it. She had my RV towed. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I simply walked back inside, placed my mug down, and grabbed my phone. This wasn't an ordinary vehicle. It wasn't just a recreational camper. No, this was a high-tech government-issued mobile surveillance unit. And Karen? Oh, Karen had just committed a federal crime. When I moved into this neighborhood 6 months ago, I thought I had escaped the chaos of my previous life. After years of working in military intelligence, all I wanted was peace and quiet. A simple suburban home, a nice driveway, and the ability to park my RV. A necessity for my occasional consulting jobs with the FBI. But the moment I parked it, I learned that this neighborhood wasn't ruled by logic or common sense. It was ruled by Karen. Karen wasn't just your average nosy neighbor. She was a tyrant in yoga pants, patrolling the streets with a clipboard, looking for the smallest violations to pounce on. If a mailbox was slightly crooked? Fine. If your grass grew half an inch too high? Fine. But an RV in a driveway? That was an offense of biblical proportions in her eyes. The first time she knocked on my door, she was all smiles. The fake kind. "Hi there, John, isn't it? I'm Karen, the HOA president," she said, extending a hand that I didn't take. "I noticed your vehicle in the driveway. Unfortunately, it's a violation of HOA regulations. You'll need to remove it immediately." I remained calm. "Actually, Karen, it's exempt from HOA rules." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me. I had dealt with people like her before. People who needed power, who thrived on control. I wasn't about to explain myself, but I decided to give her a chance. Let's just say it falls under certain federal protections. I'd rather not get into details, but I assure you it's not subject to HOA rules." Her expression darkened. "Well, I'll have to check on that. But in the meantime, you need to remove it." I nodded, not agreeing, just acknowledging her presence. I closed the door, already knowing that wasn't the end of it. For the next 2 weeks, Karen did everything she could to make my life miserable. She left warning notes on my windshield. She had the HOA issue multiple fines. She even tried to get my mail accidentally rerouted. Each time I ignored her. I had dealt with international criminals. One overzealous HOA president wasn't going to break me. But Karen wasn't just persistent. She was desperate for a win. I could see it in the way she eyed the RV every time she walked by my house. It was driving her insane. And then last night she crossed the line. I replayed the events in my head as I sat back down on my couch. Around midnight, a tow truck had rolled up quietly. I watched through the blinds as 2 men attached chains to my RV. Karen was standing across the street, arms crossed, watching like a hawk. She must have thought she was pulling off the greatest HOA victory in history. She had no idea she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Taking another sip of coffee, I dialed the number of an old colleague. "Hey Bill," I said casually. "We've got a situation." There was a pause on the other end. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where some overzealous HOA nut just had your department's surveillance vehicle towed." Silence. Then, "Are you kidding me?" "Wish I was." There was a sharp intake of breath, followed by muttered curses. "John, do you know what was inside that thing?" "Yeah. That's why I called you first." "Where is it now?" I glanced at the HOA email I had received an hour ago. Karen had proudly announced the RV's removal to all residents. It was taken to Westfield Tow Yard. Bill let out a groan. "Oh, this is bad. I'll handle it from here, but John, this is about to turn into a nightmare." A slow grin spread across my face. "Oh, I'm counting on it." 3 hours later, I heard the sound of multiple SUV engines pulling up to the neighborhood. I walked to my window just in time to see Karen stepping outside, probably expecting to be congratulated by her HOA cronies. Instead, she froze as 5 black vehicles parked in front of her house. Men in suits and tactical gear stepped out, scanning the area like they were about to raid a cartel hideout. Karen's face paled. What's going on?" One of the agents strode up to her. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you immediately." I stepped onto my porch, arms crossed, thoroughly enjoying the show. Karen's eyes darted to me, filled with confusion and for the first time fear. "John? What is this? I gave her the most innocent shrug I could muster. Oh, you mean you don't know? You towed government property. That RV wasn't just a vehicle. It was an FBI surveillance unit. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That's not possible. It was violating HOA regulations. I was just breaking federal law? One of the agents finished for her. Yeah, that's exactly what you did. Karen stumbled back. Oh my God. Oh my God. The agent pulled out a file. We have reports that you authorized the towing personally, even used HOA funds for it. Karen's hands shook as she waved them in front of her face. I didn't know. No one told me it was FBI property. The agent tilted his head. Did you ask? The color drained from Karen's face completely. She turned toward me, her expression pleading. John, you have to tell them I didn't mean. I raised a hand. Oh no, Karen. I told you to leave it alone. You didn't listen. You wanted to play enforcer? Well, congratulations. You just enforced yourself into a federal investigation. She collapsed onto her porch, hands gripping her head. The neighborhood, which had once been a silent battlefield between us, was now buzzing with murmurs and gasps from neighbors who had gathered to watch. And this was only the beginning. Karen's face was a mask of sheer panic as the FBI agents surrounded her house. She kept opening and closing her mouth like she wanted to explain, to beg, to do anything to make this all go away. But there was nothing she could say that would fix what she had done. The moment she authorized the tow, she had put herself on a collision course with a nightmare she couldn't escape. One of the agents, a tall man with a no-nonsense demeanor, pulled out a small notepad and flipped through it. Karen Thompson, correct? Karen nodded weakly. Weiss. But this is all a misunderstanding. I was just enforcing HOA rules. That RV was an eyesore. It was. The agent cut her off. That eyesore was a fully equipped FBI surveillance unit involved in an active operation. And you had it towed to a public lot, where it was left unattended and unsecured. Karen blinked rapidly, her hands shaking. I didn't know. I thought it was just some camper. No one told me it belonged to the FBI. John, who had been watching with a mug of coffee in his hand, finally stepped forward. Did you ask? The agent turned to John, nodding in acknowledgement before shifting his attention back to Karen. Miss Thompson, you need to understand the severity of this situation. That vehicle contained classified equipment. Now, thanks to your interference, it is no longer in our possession. Karen staggered back a step, her breath coming out in panicked gasps. It's still at the tow yard. I can call them. I can fix this. The agent's expression remained unreadable. We already checked. The vehicle was broken into and is no longer there. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's entire body seemed to lock up as she stared at the agent in horror. What do you mean it's not there? It was just towed last night. Where is it? The agent didn't blink. That's what we're trying to find out. John sighed, setting his coffee mug down on the porch railing. Let me guess. The moment the tow company realized it wasn't just some old camper, they decided to take a peek inside. Another agent, a woman standing near the SUVs, confirmed his suspicion. The lot was broken into 2 hours after the vehicle arrived. Surveillance footage shows masked individuals accessing the RV, but the cameras were disabled shortly after. We have reason to believe it has been moved and is now in the possession of unknown individuals. Karen's breathing grew more erratic. Oh my God, I didn't mean for this to happen. I just wanted it gone. I didn't think. The agent gave her a sharp look. That much is clear. The weight of the situation was starting to crush her. Her perfect little world of HOA rules and neighborhood dominance had just crumbled beneath her feet. This wasn't a fine for an overgrown lawn or an argument over mailbox colors. She had interfered with a federal operation and now she was staring down the possibility of actual criminal charges. John crossed his arms, watching her squirm. He had warned her. Multiple times. He had given her every opportunity to back off, to just let it go. But Karen wasn't the type to listen. He had to win. And now she had won herself a front row seat to a federal investigation. One of the agents spoke into a radio, updating his team. They were already moving to track the RV's last known location, sending out alerts, pulling surveillance footage and coordinating with local law enforcement. The entire operation had shifted into high gear because of one HOA president's arrogance. Karen turned to John, eyes wide with desperation. "You have to help me." John raised an eyebrow. "Help you? After all the fines, the threats, the notes you left on my windshield? After the late-night HOA emails and the passive-aggressive comments? You want my help?" Tears welled up in Karen's eyes. "I didn't know. I was just trying to do my job." John exhaled, shaking his head. "Karen, your job was making sure people didn't paint their houses neon green. Not committing grand theft against the federal government." The lead agent stepped in, his tone firm. "Miss Thompson, we need full cooperation from you. That means access to any HOA emails, security footage, or records related to this incident. You are also to remain available for questioning." Karen nodded so fast she looked like a bobblehead. "Yes, of course. Anything. I'll do whatever you need." The agents wasted no time. They split up, some heading toward the tow yard, others gathering data from Karen's HOA files. John, meanwhile, was content to sit back and enjoy the show. He had spent weeks dealing with Karen's nonsense, and now she was getting exactly what she deserved. Hours passed in a whirlwind of movement. The tow yard was swarmed by federal agents. The HOA office was turned inside out as they combed through records. Meanwhile, Karen sat on her front steps, looking like a woman who had just realized she was standing in quicksand. By the end of the day, the FBI had pieced together a lead. The stolen RV had been spotted on security cameras being driven out of the city limits. The people who had taken it weren't just joyriders. They knew what they had and they intended to sell it. The lead agent returned to Karen's house, where she was still sitting in stunned silence. "We have reason to believe the RV is being prepped for sale on the black market. If that happens, classified government technology could end up in the wrong hands." Karen's breath hitched. What do I do?" The agent stared at her for a moment before answering. "Right now. Stay put and don't make things worse." John couldn't help but smirk as he leaned against the porch railing. "Tough break, Karen." She shot him a look filled with misery and regret. "You think I'll go to jail for this?" John shrugged. "Depends on whether the FBI gets the RV back before anything sensitive leaks." Karen swallowed hard, her face drained of all color. "Oh my God." John picked up his coffee mug and took a slow sip, watching as reality continued to sink in for her. She had spent years terrorizing the neighborhood over minor infractions, making people's lives miserable over things as ridiculous as the length of their grass or the placement of their trash cans. But none of that mattered now. Now she was just another suspect in a federal investigation. Karen sat on her front steps, staring at the ground like she was trying to will herself out of existence. The neighborhood had never been quieter. Everyone had heard what was happening by now. Whispers spread like wildfire, and some residents were even watching from their windows, afraid but intrigued by the spectacle. The mighty HOA queen, the neighborhood tyrant, had just been reduced to a nervous wreck, shaking in the presence of federal agents. John, meanwhile, was thoroughly enjoying himself. He sipped his coffee, leaning against his porch railing, waiting for the inevitable. The FBI was not a group known for patience. They had already given Karen an order: cooperate fully or suffer the legal consequences. And based on the fact that a multi-million-dollar surveillance unit was now in the hands of criminals, those consequences weren't going to be pretty. The lead agent returned from his SUV, holding a file in his hands. He stopped in front of Karen, watching her with a scrutinizing look. "Miss Thompson, we have reason to believe that the individuals who took the RV are attempting to sell its contents. If any classified technology falls into the wrong hands, this situation becomes far worse than it already is." Karen nodded so quickly that it looked like she might sprain something. "I understand. I swear I'll do anything to fix this. I had no idea it was government property. I was just..." The agent didn't let her finish. "That's the problem. He didn't think. You assumed you were above any consequences. That's why you used HOA funds to commit grand theft." Karen's lip trembled. "Am I going to be arrested?" John smirked. He had been wondering the same thing. The agent remained stone-faced. "That depends on how quickly we recover the RV." A beat of silence followed. Then Karen jumped to her feet. "What do you need from me?" I can help. I'll talk to the tow company. I'll do anything." John chuckled. "Oh, now you want to be helpful? That's a new look for you. Karen shot him a glare, but it had no bite. She was desperate now and everyone could see it. The agents wasted no time. They had already been tracking the RV's location, narrowing it down to a warehouse outside of town. The problem was that whoever had taken it was clearly being cautious. They weren't rushing to sell it. They knew they had something valuable, and that meant negotiations were happening behind closed doors. The longer it took to retrieve, the more likely it was to be stripped for parts or sold to the highest bidder. John, who had once been part of operations like this, knew what was coming next. So, when's the takedown happening? The agent looked at him, considering. Then to Karen's horror he spoke. Tonight. Karen let out a strangled noise. Tonight. That soon? What happens if they don't give it back? The agent didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone knew what the FBI did when negotiations failed. Hours later, John found himself exactly where he had expected to be. In the passenger seat of an unmarked SUV, parked half a mile away from a dingy warehouse. He wasn't supposed to be here. Technically, this wasn't his operation. But his experience and knowledge of the RV's capabilities made him useful. And the FBI wasn't about to turn down an extra set of skilled eyes. Karen, however, was very much not supposed to be here. And yet she was. In another vehicle, parked nervously between two agents, she was gripping the door handle so tightly her knuckles had turned white. She had begged to be present, convinced that seeing this unfold firsthand would somehow absolve her of her colossal mistake. The FBI had agreed, but only so she could witness the consequences of her actions up close. Through a pair of binoculars, John spotted movement. 3 men stood outside the warehouse speaking to someone just out of view. Then a truck pulled up, its back covered by a tarp. The stolen RV. John muttered under his breath, "They're about to move it." The lead agent gave a single nod before speaking into his radio. "Go." What happened next was straight out of an action movie. Black SUVs roared forward, surrounding the warehouse in seconds. Agents in tactical gear swarmed the area, shouting commands, weapons drawn. The criminals barely had time to react before they were shoved to the ground, hands behind their backs. It was quick, efficient, and undeniably satisfying. Karen, watching from a safe distance, was hyperventilating. Oh my God, I almost got involved in that." John smirked. "No, Karen. You did get involved in that." Minutes later, the lead agent confirmed the RV was secure. "Vehicle has been recovered. Equipment intact." John exhaled in relief. That was the best possible outcome. If anything inside had been stolen or tampered with, this would have gone from bad to worse in an instant. But it seemed that, for once, luck was on their side. Karen, still shaking, looked like she was trying to disappear into the seat. "So, I'm not going to jail, right?" The agent turned to her, voice calm but firm. "Not today." Karen let out a breath of relief, but John knew better. There was no way she was getting away with this unscathed. The next morning, the news spread across the neighborhood like wildfire. Everyone knew what had happened. HOA Karen, the queen of petty fines and strict rules, had nearly caused a national security crisis. And while she wasn't being thrown into a prison cell, she wasn't walking away untouched either. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that evening. John didn't attend, but he knew exactly what the outcome would be. By the time the sun had set, Karen had been stripped of her title, permanently banned from any future leadership positions, and ordered to reimburse the HOA for the funds she had stolen for the tow. John, sipping his coffee from his porch the next morning, watched as Karen dejectedly walked out of her house, looking smaller than he had ever seen her. She didn't glare at him. She didn't sneer. She didn't even try to argue. She had been defeated. As she passed by, John gave her a small nod. "Tough break, Karen." She mumbled something under her breath before trudging away, a shell of the dictator she once was. John looked over at his newly returned RV, sitting safely in his driveway, untouched and right where it belonged. For the first time in months, the neighborhood finally felt peaceful.